Hey, it's Dr. Tracy. I'm so glad that you are joining me here for another podcast episode. I'm sitting with Greg, and we are going to answer one of your questions. Thanks for hanging out with me.
Thanks for having me back. Yeah, so this is a question that came from your community through Instagram.
Yeah, and let's back it up a little bit and
Yeah.
tell people that we take your questions.
How do they get it to you?
Yes, DMs are a busy place. And so sometimes I lose DMs, but we're social in there. I'm in there. So you can send me an email. My email button is on my Instagram page. You can send me a voice note, actually, if you're okay with your voice being played over the podcast here, which is great because then I get to hear from you and I love that. But hey, I want to make this as easy and seamless as possible. So if you want to send me that voice note through Instagram, let's do it that way. Or send me a voice note over email. And let's be honest, how much are we voice noting people? I know I voice note my friends multiple times a week. So
it's called a phone. You can pick it up and speak to them. The voice note thing is hilarious to me.
Yes.
Because it's still kind of that one-way communication, but it's audio.
But then they get to decide when they want to go into it.
I know.
And I have loved those like rare moments where a friend calls.
Like at Christmas.
New Year's. Yeah.
Was it New Year's? Yeah.
And truly you
were like shocked the phone was ringing.
Yeah. I missed the call and I said to you, did she butt dial me or did she mean to call me? And it was this whole experience of like, do I call her back? Do I not? Anyways, call your friend back if they call you.
Yeah.
When you have a moment. It was lovely. The connection inside felt great. Okay, let's do the question.
Okay, so here's the question. Please do an episode on air quote, well, I will never do blank ever again then.
Okay, so that's their partner saying it.
Right.
Okay.
So if you're saying that you're upset they didn't let you know when they were coming home much later than discussed went out with their friends, their response is, well, just never go with friends again. Sounds like all or nothing. So they often make it out as if it's the things that they enjoy that you have the problem with and not something else that happened while doing the things they enjoy. So that's an important distinction.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think, Dr. Tracy?
Yes. And I just going back to what did she say? I know it's a woman sending this in. She said to them, I just want to know, what did she say? Because she said fact plus feeling. If you're saying that you're upset that they didn't let you know when they were coming home. Okay. So I'm imagining this conversation going like this. This would be a fact plus feeling, which is a great way. You come home late and I say to you, hey, love, and maybe it's not the first thing you say, but right. How's your time? How'd things go? Hey, love, I felt hurt, or I'm feeling hurt because you didn't let me know when you're coming home. Actually, this has happened to us.
Yeah.
And next time I need to know when you'll be home so I don't have to worry about you. And that just kind of helps us with our communication. So that if you're communicating that to your partner, that is a great strategy. And the piece here around the communicator is less is more.
Right.
Don't add in more. Don't add in more examples. Just let that sit there between the two of you. Now, I think what this person is asking, though, is what do I do when he then says, well, I guess then I will just never go out and see my friends?
Yeah.
What does that sound like to you?
As I mentioned, sounds like this all or nothing thinking. It's a bit of it's a defensive response. It's poor me.
Yes.
I mean, I can relate to it. It's kind of like, oh shit, like,
It reminds me of one of our kids, actually. And I go back to the kid image because it's an early strategy that if we don't learn how to get out of it, we will repeat that strategy. So it's normal for kids to feel defensive. It's normal for kids to blame. Do you remember when our one guy would I would be standing far away and then they would trip over the shoes. They'd be like, you tripped me. And I'm like, I'm over here. It's not
20 feet away.
I tripped you. But just recognizing that our brains are built early on to be egocentric. We only see things from our experience. So here I'm thinking of Here's this kind of little boy who gets their defenses up. They feel something deeper inside. This doesn't make it right, by the way, but I want us to build understanding
Right.
around this because that understanding helps to build compassion and empathy. And from an empathic way, we can find a way through this. So, understanding that likely your partner is experiencing shame. Shame is at the root of so much of our defensiveness and so much of what we do.
For sure. Yeah. It like oozes out of it, doesn't it?
Yeah. And this is not the sense of healthy shame because healthy shame says, I'm bad. And then we can slow it down and go, oh, that's interesting. What's this voice inside of me right here? It's hitting something. My partner is expressing something. I'm going right into this hole. Oh, it's telling me that I do need to communicate something. So healthy shame moves us into the direction we want to go to live a meaningful life, to live aligned with who we want to be and how we want other people to experience us. Most people get stuck in unhealthy shame, which is the sense of I'm no good, I'm bad, I'm defective. And then we get swallowed into that. And when we get stuck into it, we have to do something. And
Mhm.
so this person then takes that shame and throws it back at her
Right.
and says, well, then I guess I will just never,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Instead of being able to slow it down and work through that process. Now, I know what a lot of people do in this moment. It's like, okay, Dr. Tracy, great. My partner's not going to go see a therapist. I'm not going to be their therapist.
Yeah. What do I do?
What do I do? And I don't want you to become their therapist. You need to be their partner. And a partner can still see this and understand it and prepare for these responses and then prepare and to meet them where they are, really.
Right.
So I was thinking of two ways of how to go through this. So one could be on a separate time and saying what the scenario is. Hey, I've noticed when I share things with you, it's almost like you go to this all or nothing. Can you tell me what you hear from me when I share those things?
Right.
And you and I have had that conversation
Sure.
before. And
Yeah.
you did connect that to kind of this like deeper sense of I'm not enough, which then when I understand that that's your experience, then I can say, oh, wow, that's not what I'm saying at all.
Right.
I'm talking about my need and my perspective. And then how do we then support you at a different time with this like I'm not enough thing kind of narrative that shows up? Yeah.
Yep. At a different time.
So that's a different time. But then I also think about, well, what do we do in that moment? And in that moment, oftentimes what people do is she likely feels not heard, which taps into some deeper stuff about her. Common themes that show up for people is I'm not angry, or sorry, I'm not important. You don't care about me. I don't matter to you. And what do we do as soon as we get into that narrative? We get angry.
Yeah.
It's so much easier to be angry at you then. So I'm going to up the ante. Up the ante means I'm going to get big. I'm going to get loud. I'm going to say it again. Why do you always have to make this about you? This isn't about you. And you never come home and tell me what time, right? Blah, 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 blah. And that's the negative cycle.
Right.
We don't want to go into that cycle because then you both end up feeling further apart and neither one of you end up feeling good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So in the moment then we can say something like, what did you hear me just say?
Yeah.
Like that could be a good one. And again, remember 80% of communication is nonverbal. If you say, what did you hear me just say?
Right.
Like I feel like I'm like parenting angry
Yeah.
role, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Instead of this like, oh wow, you know, this obviously doesn't feel good for you because that's not at all what I would want you to do. But is that what you think I'm trying to say here? So I think there's this strategy here of helping someone who gets defensive like this to say more.
Yeah.
And that saying more could even be something like, and I really like this when I talked about this one with a client recently. What do you hope to happen
Yeah. I've heard you say this before.
when you say that?
Yeah.
What do you want me to say when you say that? Like when I put that on you,
Yeah.
what happens for you?
Yeah.
My defensive expert, what happens for you when I say that?
Well, all of a sudden you're kind of holding a mirror up and it's like, oh shit, like what do I want? Maybe I don't know. Well,
But
maybe it may be like, well, I don't want you to bother me. Like I don't want it to be a big deal. I want to avoid the conflict.
Well, that's interesting because then I get more information and then I can decide what I want to do with that.
Exactly.
And I think sometimes what we do too in relationships is the whole narrative just falls forward, right? Instead of just being able to say, you know, I want you to see your friends. That's the most important thing to me. And I just need to know when you're going to be home.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because I do remember this conversation that you and I had that night where I didn't know when you're going to be home and I was worried about you. And you were defensive. And like, of course you were defensive because it went right into this feeling of like, did I do something wrong? And so
Excuse me.
maybe even as you're communicating with your partner, bless you, by the way, that you can
Real life,
say,
though.
I know, I love the real life pieces, that you can say, hey, you didn't do anything wrong. And if you go into this like emotional road of defensiveness and anger and that all or nothing, I'm going to stay in my high road and bring in laughter and lightness, not in the way of like, haha, look at
Mhm.
you, but in the way of like, oh, like I just needed to know,
Yeah.
I think you would want the same from me. And how can we then move forward on this?
In this example, though, what if her partner in this case just ups the ante and keeps on it? Well,
Yeah. Hey, listen, that's not where I'm going right now with this. And I think we need to take a break.
let's
Um,
come back to it.
let's come back to it another time. And it is that willingness to break from something like
Yeah.
this. And it doesn't have to be swept under the rug, never talked about again. Maybe it's the talking about it and saying, and this could be a time where you need to give more time. So here's the thing. We all know our partners. I know you're defensive, I'm sharp. We know those things about each other. So if we're coming to communicate something important, hold that in mind. Do kind of the self and other. Do the piece where it's like, how is my partner going to experience me sharing it in this way? And then knowing who my partner is, this is Stan Tatkin, he talks about the couple bubble. Knowing who my partner is, what do I need to do then to help them understand that? So if I know that you go to defensiveness right away, if I have an issue, I'm going to try not to bring it up at bedtime, but instead bring it up at a time where we can feel more connected and work through things. If I know that you really take things personally, not you, but like you in general, but
Yeah.
if you take things personally, then I'm going to make sure that I start out by saying, hey, listen, I'm going to share something with you. This isn't personal. I need to share this with you because it's important to us.
Yeah.
And I don't need you to do anything. I just need you to hear that this was a hard moment for me and I was worried. And then how can we plan for next time? Which then again really is, this is the boundary piece. The boundary is, what am I doing next time?
Right.
The boundary is me saying to you, next time, can we set a time so I know when you're home? And if plans change, just send me a text to let me know.
Right. Cool.
Cool. I love this question. All right. You can send me your questions. And if something stood out for you from today, send me a note on Instagram. I'm social. I'm over there. I answer
What's your handle?
My handle is Dr. Tracy D, all one word. And I have lots of resources for you and other podcast episodes to check out over at drtracyd.com. So thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me back.
All right. We'll see you next time.